Okay, hello everybody. I'm Jeff Kupfer. I'm the president of ConservAmerica. We are delighted today to be joined by Representative Buddy Carter. He's in his fifth term as a representative from Georgia, where he represents the first district, which runs up the coast of Georgia. He's been a lifelong resident of that district. He's been a mayor, a state representative, and now he's a member of the U.S. Congress. And beginning in this Congress, he's also been the co-chair of the Roosevelt Conservation Caucus, which is a bicameral group of members who are committed to finding conservative and pragmatic solutions to our country's energy, environmental, and conservation challenges. And we at ConservAmerica work closely with the members of that caucus and with the caucus itself. Last year, Representative Carter received our Congressional Leadership Award for all the great work that he's been doing over the years. And since he received that award, he's actually continued to do even more on the leadership front. A few weeks ago, he was named as the committee chair of the Energy and Commerce Subcommittee on the Environment, Manufacturing, and Critical Minerals. And so we thought we'd start by, first of all, congratulating the representative on achieving that chair role, and then also talking a little bit about what the priorities are for that subcommittee as we go into this congressional year. So enough of me, Congressman. I'll turn it over to you to take it from here.
Well, Jeff, thank you very much. And thank ConservAmerica for the great work that y'all do. And I mean that sincerely. As you mentioned, I have the honor and privilege of representing the entire coast of Georgia, over 100 miles of pristine coastline. It is my home. It's where I've lived all my life, where I intend to live the rest of my life. And it means a lot to me. And some of my fondest memories are going fishing with my dad. And I want my children or my grandchildren to have those same memories and have those same opportunities. And I get frustrated quite often whenever I hear that Republicans aren't conservatives and are conservationists, I should say. To the contrary, I believe we are. And a lot of people have questioned, well, you're a pharmacist. Why does this mean so much to you? Well, it means so much to me because of what I just said. I represent the entire coast of Georgia, and yeah, we're up here as representatives of our districts, and therefore it should reflect what's important in our district. And conservation is important in my district, and that's why I have such an interest in it outside of my own just personal interest. But it's been quite a ride, if you will, that coming to this chairmanship of the Environment and Manufacturing and Critical Materials Subcommittee. I'm honored to take that position. Bill Johnson did a great job, and these are big shoes to fill, and I appreciate Kathy McMorris Rogers and her confidence in appointing me to that position. But we've got a lot of work to do. We've got to make sure that we beat China. China is the OPEC of critical minerals right now. We all understand that. And if we learned anything during the COVID experience and the pandemic, it's that we can't rely on our adversaries for critical for the supply chain and critical supplies. We've got to have allies, and we've got to be able to do that ourselves. And that's one of the things that I want us to be able to do. Another thing that's very important to our subcommittee, I believe, is going to be permitting. I had the opportunity last year to go to Houston. I believe it was 3 times. And every time I went and met with those energy companies, it was the same thing over and over again. Permitting regulations are crushing us. And no matter what sector of our economy you talk to, whether it be energy, whether it be healthcare, or whatever, everyone agrees. Permitting is crushing us right now. And we've got to do something about the permitting process. All of us want to make sure that we're being responsible, but this is just, we've reached a tipping point, and we're overdoing it with the permitting to the point where it's just crushing us. So that'll be something that's very important to us as well. We want to unleash American energy, and that's very important. I subscribe, as I think a number of Republicans do, to an all of the above type energy strategy. I get frustrated whenever I hear people say that we haven't done enough to decrease carbon emissions and pollution here in America. the United States of America has decreased carbon emissions more in the last 10 years than the next 12 countries combined while still growing our economy. So we can do it, and we have done it. In fact, I'm often critical of the fossil fuel industry, and that I don't think they've done a good enough job of telling the story of how they've decreased emissions. And so often many people want to demonize fossil fuels. Well, we all know that in a practical sense, yes, we want to get to no emissions and to zero emissions, but it's going to be a while before we do that. And fossil fuels are going to have to help bridge that gap there, and they will. And again, through innovation and through the research and development that they've done in that industry, they've decreased emissions and will continue to do that. So, we've got a lot ahead of us in the environmental subcommittee, and I'm excited about it.
Well, you certainly a lot on your plate. I know you've hit the ground running with a hearing last week on cybersecurity issues in the water system, and I'm sure that will be something as you look at infrastructure as well that you're going to deal with. Can I ask you a little bit on just unpacking a little bit about what you mean about beating China as a practical matter, and how you look at that from a policy standpoint? That what should the U.S. be doing in order to accomplish that?
Well, we know that we're losing that battle. We know that China, and let's face it, China doesn't have anywhere near the environmental policies that we have here in America. We get it and we understand that, and we're not suggesting that we not have permitting and not have regulations. Of course, we should have that, but there are two things that we've got to do better. We've got, first of all, we got to mine for critical minerals. We have critical minerals here in America, but we're not mining for them. We've got to be able to do that. Secondly, is the processing. And I get it. I know what China's doing over there. They do processing, and once they've contaminated a site, they just close it out and move somewhere else. Well, we're not going to do that, but we can do processing here in America, and we need to be doing processing. But we don't need to be reliant on them. Right now, we are reliant on them. I mentioned that they are the OPEC of critical minerals. My district is one of the few districts that actually mines for critical minerals, and we're doing that. And if you look at the state of Georgia has consistently been, I believe, for the last 11 years, the number one state in which to do business. And one of the reasons for that is because we've acknowledged that we've got to adhere to some of these policies, but at the same time, we've got to be business friendly. And we are business friendly in Georgia. We need to be business friendly in the United States as well.
You talk about the all of the above approach to energy, which we certainly ConservAmerica support, and have been troubled by the pause in LNG exports that is on the table in the Biden administration. And the other piece that you recognize, and I think it's important to continue to remind everybody, is the link between revenues that come from federal production of oil and gas and conservation. Last year, you and I co-authored an op-ed which talked about the Land and Water Conservation Fund, which distributes millions of dollars throughout the country, places in your district and others, and that support conservation projects. And the funds for that come from royalties and revenues from activity drilling in federal lands and in federal water. So I think that's always important, and I know it's something you care about.
It is something I care about, and it's something that all of us should care about. We need those funds. Let's face it, environmental protection and economic growth are not mutually exclusive. We need to understand that. And it is important that the Land and Water Conservation Fund continue. That depends on, of course, a lot of drilling, a lot of mining. And the offshore leases that have not been approved by the Department of Interior, there was to be a 5-year offshore leasing program that was, when it's not approved, when it's not extended, then we lose those funds. And when we lose those funds, we lose valuable assets for conservation. And that's one thing that we have to keep in mind, how important it is that we have those funds available.
Another aspect of conservation, which I know you've also been focused on, is the Endangered Species Act.
Mm-hmm.
And we're at the 50th anniversary of that. Question whether it's accomplished all of its goals. Do you have some thoughts about where we are with ESA or what we could be doing about it?
Well, let's not forget that that ESA started with the Republican president, and that's important to note. The program really hasn't worked as well as I think it should and could work. There have only been a handful of instances where we've had some of the wildlife that had been listed on the Endangered Species Act to come off of it, and some of those were simply errors that they should have never been on there in the first place. But overall, I'm disappointed that the program hasn't worked better than it has, and it needs to be looked at again. It needs to be updated and probably needs to be tweaked. It should never, it should never be really inhibiting us. Instead, we should be working to. Obviously, we want to make sure that all these species exist and continue to thrive, but we got to do it in such a way, and it can be done in such a way that it doesn't destroy our economy.
Right. Okay. Well, we'll be looking forward to your ideas on that, and I know that's something that'll evolve throughout this year as people begin to look at the ESA, and you've certainly given it a lot of thought. Our tagline at ConservAmerica is "Conservation is conservative," which is something you mentioned before. So as we wrap this up, at least for this installment, I'll just ask you again to talk a little bit about why you think conservation is something that conservatives should support and conservatives should rally around.
Well, let's not forget who was known as the conservation president, Teddy Roosevelt, and Teddy Roosevelt, who established all the national forests, the national parks. So this originated as a Republican effort, if you will, and it continues as that. We got to get past this in our country of painting with such a broad brush that we're saying, oh, this group is this, that group is that. That's not true at all. Republicans are conservationists. We do love our environment. I mean, you talk about hunting and fishing, and I mean, then you're talking about conservatives, and you're talking about Republicans and conservationists. So it is something that I think that we are doing better at messaging in the Republican Party and doing better as conservationists to make sure that we understand that we can be conservationists and still grow our economy, that those two do go together.
Okay. Well, Congressman, we really appreciate your time today. We'll be looking forward to your chair of the committee and all the things that you're going to do. And we look forward to being back in touch with you as the year goes on to get some updates and have further discussions on these really important issues.
Okay. Thank you very much for having me.
Okay. Thanks.